JD Vance delivers a mic drop moment when confronted about the Epstein files. Blaze News, The Mandate, starts right now. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Jill Savage, joined as always by Editor-in-Chief Matthew Peterson.
Another beautiful day in Dallas, and we're going to talk about the good stuff today.
We are. It's not the good stuff always to Chris Bedford, but he is our DC politics editor. Just pretend like we're not going to talk about Epstein here for a minute, Chris.
Oh, I know we're going to talk about Epstein. You love talking about Epstein. And you know what? I'm here for it.
But you know what? We're going to talk about Epstein because JD Vance was talking about Epstein, and he did so in a way that we love. It's a way that Vance showcases why he is the future leader of the Republican Party.
There's an interesting thing about this case that the American media seems to totally ignore. For 4 years, under Joe Biden's Department of Justice, the media didn't give a damn about the Epstein files or about the Epstein case. For literally 20 years, the story about this scumbag, and he is a scumbag pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, he's dead now, but for 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the case. They didn't show any curiosity about the case. And now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency. And somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama and George W. Bush.
I think this framing from JD Vance, we all know, yes, did they screw up with the rollout of the Epstein documents? Sure. We've seen this multiple times now by the Trump administration. Let's acknowledge that first and now say JD Vance, the way that he is framing this, right? We always say the Republicans have problems with messaging. He's actually going through and turning this back on the establishment because this isn't something that has just come up in the last 6 months, you guys. This is something that has been going on for years and years and years. And Matt, the way that he went through and actually rightfully so put some blame on even W. Bush and Obama, it's not just a Trump issue.
Yeah, well, what happened here is that the right or the Bondi, DOJ sort of came out and then balked a little bit, and there was a pause, right? And so like they threw a punch, but it was sort of a half-hearted punch, and that got the left excited. So the Democrats all of a sudden thought, oh, we finally have something. It took them a while. We finally have something to go after, Trump on, and you were hiding your own crimes with Epstein, and you're distracting from Epstein. And then, this was like the uppercut, just right to the chin, saying, wait a minute, you guys want to talk about Epstein? You didn't want to talk about Epstein for years. We actually are. You can screw off. So very powerful turn of the frame.
Yeah, and you can see the media doesn't care about justice, Chris. They care about going through and actually trying to use this Epstein stuff against Donald Trump and the administration.
Yes, they never did. They don't care about transparency. They don't care about justice. They didn't care about this case until it was a convenient cudgel by Democrats. And Democrats have only been successful in making this such an excellent cudgel against the president because of the expectations that were massively inflated by some of the influencers who are now in positions of power in Washington, D.C., sometimes pushed by President Trump himself. And then, honestly, there was press conferences and questions that President Trump answered where he might as well have rented one of those little airplanes that pull a banner that say, "You're getting under my skin, please keep going." Because she showed that it clearly irritated him. And of course it did, because this was the 6-month anniversary of the most impactful domestic presidency since FDR, at least as far as I can tell in this country. And people were talking about Epstein instead. So it really bothered him. But if you do, just all you have to do with this whole case is take a step back like Vice President Vance did, and he does so well in a lot of different places, and President Trump was getting towards, and I think has arrived at, and say, guys, this really, truly, deeply, everyone knows it, from the Washington Post to whoever, everyone except for the Wall Street Journal, apparently, is not our scandal. We're not hiding stuff here. There's no thing that's going to make you feel better. And this is a problem that has gone on for Democrats. It's gone on for Republicans. It's gone on for the elites. It's gone on for the administration. It's happened down in Florida. It's happened internationally. You could keep going and going and going. And That's what JD Vance did so masterfully. And he's kind of kept a low profile as vice president in some ways. He hasn't been saddled with these really stupid suicidal jobs that Joe Biden kept on kind of having a little grin when his staff gave those to Kamala Harris to shut her up and keep her ambitions down. Instead, he's kind of gone around and tossed the red meat, but also done so in a very artful and very persuasive manner. Talked about things that matter to conservatives, been an emissary through this whole thing, from the start of Epstein through the Elon Musk fight, through all the other little blips and blurps that have come up in this administration, been an emissary to the American right and shown that he's someone who can be trusted by this administration, is not going to step out of his place or out of his role and tick off the president, and at the same time can be very useful.
Yeah, you say that JD Vance has kept a low profile. Matt always says you can't go so close to the sun. You have to go and let Donald Trump be Donald Trump, Matt.
Yeah, and this is wise because, in the beginning of the administration, it was incredible. It was like the super friends all together, seeing Marco Rubio and JD Vance being so active in the administration. But ultimately, you need to find your own lane and let Trump be Trump. And so you see Vance here, like he was away for a while. He kind of was quiet for a while, and then he comes out swinging. And that's just a great role for him. It's a perfect role for him where I'm sure he's doing all kinds of things behind the scenes, but he doesn't have, as Chris is saying, these sort of fake and performative tasks that they'll give vice presidents, like your job will be the czar of whatever. And so JD's been able to stay JD and come out there and articulate, and that's what he did last night.
Kamala Harris, the border czar, don't forget it. But JD Vance last night was...
Joe Biden is in charge of solving cancer.
He was definitely going to solve cancer. But they did let JD out. He was speaking last night brilliantly, as he usually does. He was talking about H-1B visas and how they're actually being abused to replace American workers and suppress wages. Take a look.
You see some big tech companies where they'll lay off 9,000 workers and then they'll apply for a bunch of overseas visas. And I sort of wonder, that doesn't totally make sense to me.
The math doesn't.
That displacement and that math worries me a bit. And what the president has said, he said very clearly, we want the very best and the brightest to make America their home. We want them to build great companies and so forth. But I don't want companies to fire 9,000 American workers and then to go and say, we can't find workers here in America. That's a bullshit story.
Yeah, and he's laying it out exactly like it is, Chris. When you look at H-1B visas, they were supposed to be, what we were told, is that they were going to be the rare skilled workers that we just couldn't find here in America. It was a loophole, and it is completely being exploited right now.
Oh, it's all a lie. It's always been a lie. Just think about it. Our friends and our parents and their friends, all of them have stories, either about themselves or about their siblings or about their cousins or about their neighbors, having to go through the incredible indignity of coming to work to train your foreign replacements. I mean, I know a guy who graduated, I used to be roommates with him, graduated college with me, whose job was to train Indians to do the work that his colleagues were doing. He wasn't very popular amongst his colleagues, but he's one of the few who actually survived, who was born in the United States and kept his job. This whole thing has always been a lie. And, there's kind of a sick history of this in the United States that goes back generations it goes back to the founding, it goes back before the founding of the extremely wealthy people in the United States not wanting to pay the people who live in this country and coming up with any scheme they possibly can, from borrowing laborers from the Chinese to stealing them from Africa to importing them from Mexico to importing them from, now we're all over the planet, to work in these jobs, and all in the name of, listen, we don't want to pay you. We don't want to pay you. And it's always been a destabilizing force in the country. It's always been a stain in our history. And it's just constant. It's just never stopped. And I know it can be offensive sometimes to compare some of the labor that's going on here to sins of American capitalists in the past. But if you do go back and look at the whole thing, you realize, or if you look at the reports from the police reports from the raids and the slaughterhouses and the raids and the drug farms that are run by cartels, you're finding child labor. You're finding absolutely egregious conditions. You're finding people who are losing limbs in some of these machines, and they don't have any recourse. So that entire thing is being entirely taken advantage of. And that's even part of that story at the beginning, the lead up to the American Civil War, you hear about bloody Kansas and all this fight between the pro-slavers and the anti-slavers. The main fight for the anti-slavers was, I'm not going to come out here and get this farm only to be replaced by slave labor. I need to be paid a full wage. And that was what got them so angry. They weren't social justice warriors per se. They were just trying to feed themselves and their family and take care of things. So this is an age-old conflict, an age-old lie. And I love that finally in my life, the American right is just calling it out and saying, no more of this.
Well, you can go all the way back for the sins of an American company, all the way back to the beginning of this month, July 2nd, Microsoft announced a layoff of 9,000 employees in the latest round of cuts. And then on July 3rd, who would have guessed? The next day, Microsoft applies for as many as 6,000 specialized migrant worker visas, Matt. So I don't know, maybe one story went with the other there.
Yeah, I think they were connected. Not Sherlock Holmes over here, but those were definitely connected. And this is the shameful thing that Chris is talking about. These companies do this all the time. They will fire American workers in favor of cheap labor. The important thing about JD Vance's comments is not just that he said what no one has said in the right in a long time. It's also where he said it. He said it at the Hill and Valley Forum in front of people in tech who are much more, Hill and Valley is more people who are more aligned to the right, or at least like open and not a bunch of wokesters. And he's saying it directly to tech overlords, and they're realizing, if they're on the side of President Trump, that they have to get on board with this and actually start training and hiring American workers. So, he's saying it right to their face, which is extremely important. And when it comes to tech, this is where the excuse always comes in, right? Tech says, well, we don't have enough qualified people because these jobs require, a lot of knowledge and skill that Americans just don't have. But that is the lie that you see people, questioning over and over again today. And this has been a lie for a long time. And of course, the problem is, if we didn't have the skilled workers, then train them here, because we can't have an economy that relies on importing cheap labor from elsewhere. And this has been going on for so long. It's so ingrained in the entire society. The only way to deal with this is to directly call it out, to talk to the businesses themselves. And thank God that's what JD Vance and others are now doing.
Yeah, because Chris, it feels like we've all been lied to, right? People that are our age or younger, we were all taught to, learn to program, learn to code. You're going to have a job forever. Well, you will, until they have to go get an H-1B visa and take your job away and give it to a foreign worker.
Yeah, that'll be some of the first stuff to actually be able to go. They're coming for people in my career field too. The writers are coming for accountants. They're coming for lawyers. They're coming. It's actually, I kind of thought initially that it was the unskilled labor positions that would be in the most danger. You look out the window when you land at the airport and you see the guys whose job it is to avoid danger, stay safe, guide airplanes, load bags, things like that. And why couldn't those things be replaced by robots? But it turns out it's actually a lot easier to replace a mid-level to low-level white-collar job than it is to replace the body functions and the grips and the danger, the thinking and the recognition of danger that you have in a lot of the other labor that you can kind of just learn at being trained on the job. The whole thing is being threatened. And I also this is not just a threat to this is a threat to the United States, but it's also a threat to large parts of the planet that experience an incredible brain drain. You see in the United States where there are beautiful parts of the American country that are losing a lot of their ambitious people to garbage cities that turn them into just mindless drones, as opposed to staying in their home states and actually being contributing to that economy and building families there. Maine, for example, beautiful state of Maine. I think a lot of Blaze staff ended up there over the last holiday. They have a really strong campaign to get people from Maine to please come back to Maine when they start their families. And I know a bunch have taken advantage of it. But there are other countries around the world that are being hammered by this, by the labor that's just leaving, by the labor that's fleeing, that's the labor that's coming here, and all for that.
Real quick, before we jump back in, we need to talk about the ranchers because American farms are getting crushed and grocery stores keep stocking meat from overseas. You know that 85% of the so-called grass-fed beef in stores is actually imported. That's why you need to look at goodranchers.com because it's 100% American. You know that it is born, raised, and harvested right here on local family farms, and it tastes amazing. Summer is still here. There is nothing better than grilling out with all your family and friends, and they have all of the steaks and burgers and chicken, even that wild-caught seafood, and you're definitely going to be able to taste the difference. Plus, you get to support real American ranchers with every box. And right now, when you subscribe, you can get free meat for life. You can get your choice of Wagyu burgers, hot dogs, bacon, or wings in every box. Just use the code Jill, and they'll knock off an extra $40 as well. So go to goodranchers.com, use the code Jill, and back the people who actually feed this country. It's Good Ranchers, American meat delivered. Well, JD Vance, he gave us a masterclass in media. Moving on, he didn't destroy, JD Vance didn't destroy the mainstream media. They already did that on their own. Actually, according to Newsmax, you guys, ABC, NBC, and CBS dedicated almost 2,300 hours of coverage to Russiagate back in 2017 to 2029. Now, Tulsi Gabbard comes through and declassifies all these documents, and they got a grand total of 41 seconds on the news. And that was only by CBS. NBC, ABC did not cover this thing at all, Chris. We know that their ratings right now are so bad, but how do we even make sense of 41 seconds of TV coverage for stories that are this big and this important? No, we can't hear you.
Did you lose me?
There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm back right now.
Did you mute it?
I did because this is so awkward. There was a fight. I have to admit, I have more than one cat. And they were fighting under the table ferociously, screeching and yelling. I figured I'd hit the mute button right there. Yeah. I'm loving this story. And I love that they're not covering it either. And because they can't. Because Russiagate, as much as it is a story about incredibly crooked intelligence assets, about the head of the CIA being as corrupt as, left and right, we always kind of assumed that they were. This is also majorly a story about their own intellectual corruption, their own intellectual rot, their own inability to actually, the willingness to be led by the nose by American intelligence agencies through a story that fit into their kind of partisan idea about what truth should look like. I mean, I know people in this industry. I don't even want to name their names because we've been friendly before, but who won big prizes and got big paychecks and got promotion and have no shame for being tools of American intelligence. Now, listen, there's a lot of careers out here in Washington, in Langley, Virginia, all over the world, in Berlin, in Moscow, where being a tool of American intelligence may even be an interesting and noble pursuit. But a reporter in the United States going after a partisan agenda, that's not one of them. These people completely besmirched their names. And this is something you've seen even more than from MSNBC and CNN, which are at least don't try to hide their partisan bias as much. You see this from the American networks, the original three out there. They just ignore what they want to ignore completely. They don't spend any time trying to take it down. They don't spend any time trying to say, no, that's wrong because of this reason. They just simply ignore it if it's inconvenient to the narrative that they're spinning. And their audience is rapidly aging out. They're passing away. Their audience is not growing. They're not attracting young people. But for decades and decades, their ability to be the only news media, national news media, that thank God, a lot of these people watched, really gave them a lot of power over the votes, over the reality, over the understanding of what they were voting on, over who President Barack Obama was, over what kind of person Donald Trump was, over what kind of person Joe Biden is, who Hillary Clinton is. They were really able to define that because for a lot of the country, that maybe that morning show that they watch is really the only national news before they go about their family and their day and their activities and the things that they're actually involved with. And they've taken advantage of that, and they don't now want to cover how crooked and how wicked they've been this whole time.
And if you look at the Washington Post, we all remember Jeff Bezos going through and overhauling their opinion section, right? And that actually led to the resignation of their opinions editor, David Shipley. That was supposedly 75,000 subscribers that they lost. It's in a bigger picture of over 250,000 subscribers that they've lost, MP. Like, the numbers aren't going in the right direction right now for the Washington Post.
Yeah, let's not forget that the Washington Post and the New York Times are certainly part and parcel of what Chris is talking about, along with the old networks of being in bed with the intelligence agencies and going along with the narrative. And I've said this for years now, since at least 2018. What President Trump did by his mere existence, but then also by coining the phrase fake news, is he dared the media to go all in on Russiagate. And that is the spear that they forged for him to thrust through Trump and kill him. The walls are closing in. And he just grabbed that and over the course of 8 years turned it around and is putting it through their heart. And so, they decided to die on this hill. They decided to go all in, all the way up to 11, all the cultural, prestige machine of all these institutions that were prestigious in news. And now, as Chris says, they can't leave the hill. They can't leave their post. They're stuck where they are. And so now is the time to really finish them. And that's where we're at today. That's the beautiful thing about what's happening every day. So they can continue to ignore Russiagate. They can ignore the truth. But this is going to become increasingly hard for them as subscriptions dwindle.
Chris, go ahead.
Matt Taibbi had such a great post about this that he's popped up the other day after the Washington Post fact checker took his buyout, that the fact checker, who's this Glenn Kessler, who's been a liar his entire career. And he said, you're looking at these Washington Post opinion makers. These are the well-known ones. From Philip Bump to Jonathan Capehart to Catherine Ram to Karen Adia. They're taking Jeff Bezos' buyout offers after it turns out, like you said, 250,000 people were laid off from or subscribers stopped buying the Washington Post. That's right after Colbert's firing. That's right after the congressional vote to defund NPR. That's after the overhauls at MSNBC, where they laid off a lot of Rachel Maddow's staff. They're paying her millions of dollars, by the way, to work like a day a week.
Yeah, she took a $5 million pay cut, though. Don't leave Rachel. I mean, come on, man. She's going out there struggling. She's taking a $5 million pay cut, Chris.
She's struggling. Yeah, and you got Joy Reid's show was canceled. I know people who are laid off in the CNN layoffs of 6% of the company just in January that everyone knew was coming, by the way. ABC shut down 538.com, their polling news site. They laid off the 75 employees there. That was earlier this spring. And Vox Media, the Huffington Post, other places, I can't believe HuffPost's still around, we're shedding employees too. That's all just this year. This age of the conventional wisdom machine is over, and it committed suicide. And it couldn't be over sooner because I would have absolutely loved for them to continue to exist if they were doing good work. They're not. So they shouldn't. They're actually just spreading hate. They're spreading evil. They're harassing old ladies in their yard. I remember back in the day, harassing elderly citizens in their yards because apparently they accidentally posted a meme that the Russians had invented. Just like completely insane stuff. And the media has done this so much to itself, not just by missing trends. And there are some business trends that are extremely difficult to figure out. How do we actually make a business model is extremely difficult to figure out. How do we succeed as companies? These are hard questions. Local news, for example, it's got wiped out by Craigslist and now just by internet advertising in general. It's one of the reasons that people don't buy local news is because a lot of it doesn't actually report on local news anymore, even without the advertising. It reports on national news. It's liberal politics. You can go to the reddest town in Pennsylvania, and they're liberals who work in the newspaper. You can go down to southern Florida and Naples, where everyone there is a Republican except for the local newspaper staff. And because of that constant harassment and haranguement and the attraction our industry has to literally the worst people on the planet, well, up there at least, to some of the worst people on the planet, people don't want to buy the product anymore. And I hope, because we need it, that there is some kind of a media, there's a slice of the pie that can be reopened by smart people, by honest people, by enterprising local journalists, by intelligent and thinking national journalists, and a business model that's going to be able to put up and allow people to succeed beyond just a Substack, but in a broader networks and in broader outlets that have the resources to do the real reporting. That's important.
It reminds me of that Seinfeld episode where you know how to take the reservation, you just don't know how to keep the reservation. You know what your job is actually supposed to be, you just don't go do it. But Matt, we see Dave Landau walking around this building all the time. He is so much better. He's much funnier than the guys that we're actually seeing on late night talk shows.
Oh, yeah. Well, guys like that need to be elevated. They need to have the resources around them and to be elevated to take on the new role that is offered them. So what you have now is a gap, right? You have a gap in the market. You have an old industry that's falling apart. And, to be clear, there was a question among many people until recently. Are they actually going to commit suicide? Or are they just going to change? And the answer is suicide. I mean, that's the answer. That's what they've chosen, and that's where they're going. So that means that this gap, this opening in the market is real. And if you can find the right business model now is the time to really build and push the people who have talent, because there's this unprecedented. In our lifetime, we've never seen anything like this in media. What's going on now is very real and it's very possible, but it's going to take a lot of work to get there. And this is music to our ears, because this is the stuff I've been thinking about for 20 years. I mean, so I remember saying in 2005, like, well, we should do more with local. We could do this and that. No one wanted to hear any of those ideas. Everyone thought this is ridiculous. The New York Times, Washington Post, all these models are the same. Yeah, the internet came, but we're weathering it. And now all of a sudden, it's just wide open field. And so we got to take that field as quickly as possible.
I know the three of us are very excited about that. Nobody, though, can go through and put Chris Bedford in a corner. Nobody can silence Chris Bedford. Only his cats, when they put his mic on mute. That's the only way that we're getting Chris to not say anything, are the cats.
I wanted to hear the cats.
That's so embarrassing.
It's so good. I love it. I was like, I can't hear Chris. This is the first time in the entire time of the show where I'm like, I can't hear him. Oh, it's the cats. But they need to make another TV appearance sometime soon. So don't shoo them away. We miss them.
Yeah, I think they will.
Okay. All right. Maybe tomorrow. We'll see you then.
See you then.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be taking a look at the Senate race in South Carolina. Lindsey Graham has a primary opponent next. Well, let's be real. We're living in a time right now where telling the truth feels risky. All the lies are dressed up as compassion. And if you speak honestly, they call it hate. And the media tries to go through and sell that as tolerance, but we know better. At BlazeTV, we're not playing that game. We'll tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's not popular, because staying silent isn't an option. That's why on this show and across the BlazeTV network, we go beyond the headlines. We're not just reacting. We're actually digging into what's going on and who's behind it. And you're not going to get that from the corporate media. They've picked one side, and it's not yours. But we're here to push back. We have all the facts and conviction, and it's not just about making content, it's a mission. When you subscribe to BlazeTV, you're not just supporting conservative voices, you're standing with a movement that refuses to back down. Right now, it's only $8 a month. When you use the promo code BNT, it's $20 off a yearly plan, and it all breaks down to just 26 cents a day to support the truth. So go to blazetv.com/BNT and sign up today, because the truth matters, and the people that are in power are working overtime to shut it down. Well, let's be real. South Carolina is a red state, so why does it have some of the bluest Republicans in the Senate? Paul Dance joins us now with a big announcement. He's running as a challenger to South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. So, Paul, thanks so much for joining us here today. So let's just get into it. Why did you decide to run for Senate?
For our children. We need representation in the United States Senate that actually reflects the people of South Carolina. We don't need a 70-year-old childless warmonger. We have to rebuild this country. We have to save it. And we are going to do that through South Carolina values. Lindsey Graham's time is up. He's completely disconnected with people here on the ground. And it's getting to a point where it's very dangerous for us to continue this way.
Let's talk about good old Lindsey Graham. I mean, this guy has survived for years on name ID, and he's well known nationally. this is someone who has pushed military intervention and a number of other things, but then he seems to come back on TV and say, I want to say the opposite, but, he says different things, right, over time. Why do you think he does that?
Look, he's always been a deep state operative. Sometimes he'll back up. This past Sunday, he was on the morning shows and basically completely flummoxed when showing his responses from 2017. He was one of the original Russiagate hoaxers, and now we're supposed to believe that he wants to get to the bottom of it. This is a guy who cheerleaded every major international intervention over the last 20 years. His record is 3 endless wars, and he wants to start a 4th, World War III, by putting boots on the ground in Iran. How does he get away with it? He gets away with it because until me, he's never had a legitimate challenger. And this is going to stop. We're standing up. We're going to liberate South Carolina from the clutches of the deep state. This is curtains for Lindsey, and it's Sunset Boulevard at this stage.
I mean, he's opposed some of Trump's most aggressive executive reforms. He's flipped on, key issues. Yet he always tries to say that he's MAGA. I mean, that's frustrating, I think, to many in our audience who, they have real problems with Lindsey Graham and would like to see a challenger. But he maintains that he's MAGA.
Look, I, for one, I've been MAGA since, before the escalator. I was hoping he ran in 2012. For MAGA to look at Lindsey Graham, there is no amount of lipstick you can put on that man to make MAGA fall for him. It's just, we look at him and say, no, dude, that is a rhino. And as much as he, golfing with Trump aside, he can't resist, running off to a foreign country with a dictator and cheering on bombs. It's like in South Carolina, how we spend Sunday morning? We go to church. That's what we do. When I get out of church, I get another push notification that Lindsey is advocating to drop bombs in another part of the world. And it's just completely disconnected. And the reality is he really is the deep state kind of tool here in South Carolina.
Well, your opponents are trying to go out there and push a media narrative of, this is going to be a short-lived race. So what's your response to them?
Look, God's on our side. We are moving forward with this. This race is going to prosecute Lindsey Graham. In the immortal words of Andrew Breitbart, we're going to vet him this time. And the bottom line is that people are done with Lindsey. He can't get on a stage with Trump down here without being drowned out by booze. You saw that in 2024 in Pickens. You go to Somerville, you go to Columbia, it's always the same story. The boos are getting louder. The polling shows that he's completely underwater, and even President Trump's endorsement, isn't gonna move the needle. Even more people, as a majority, believe that, and I say this as the biggest fan of President Trump, someone who's just spent his last decade plus working every day for America first, that he can get it wrong. He did endorse Mitch McConnell. Of all the greatness of President Trump, he has a Achilles heel when it comes to personnel. But look, we're not going to let our kids go in the hands of Lindsey Graham. That's not the going away gift for President Trump in a couple of years, to leave South Carolina with that warmonger. And it ends today. And we're going to take all this work that we were able to do, getting him in, getting Project 2025. I was the architect of Project 2025. And that was born really in response to people like Lindsey Graham. He is the endless war, endless government, endless spending guy. And we're about God, family, and country.
Amazing. Project 2025, let's talk about that, behind you. I mean, here's something where that's a controversial issue, right? It's a controversial issue. It has some critics from the right, and it has, of course, the left thinks it's, the evil fascist plan incarnate. And in reality, as we've said on the show, this was a bunch of people, many of whom are in the administration now, who were banding together with ideas to really return power to the people. But that has its critics on right and left. So what do you say to them?
Well, the proof's in the pudding. President Trump had the greatest 180 days in large measure because thousands of patriots came together. I led them. I kind of created this based on my own experience as an outsider going into Washington and seeing how do we even make change here? And what we were able to do is take all this good work and put it in one place, centralize it. And now the administration has been able to operationalize that on a daily basis. Like the libs were right. It is existential threat to the deep state. That's exactly what we meant. We said, J'accuse, we're coming after you. And we put the source code to the deep state online, and they lost their minds. People on our side, I think they got a little confused or a little bit competitive about it. But to be clear, our side was 110 conservative groups coming together under the auspices of the Heritage Foundation. We used that great organization's convening power to basically say, look, we agree about 70% of the stuff. Let's stop arguing about the 30 and help someone the next time he or she's in power to move out day one. And the result's been fantastic. So look, this race is far from finished. We have, fought the good fight, but right now we know where the choke point is, and that's the United States Senate. And President Trump needs advocates like myself who are going to be able to move out day one, understand the policy, understand who the controlled opposition like Lindsey Graham are, and get things done.
So with that in mind, let's dive into that a little bit deeper, because we are all about taking down the deep state here on this show. So what does draining the swamp actually look like in the Senate right now?
Well, sure. With what we put forward, and this was based on my experience. I'm an attorney. I worked for 20 years. I was a true believer. I went to MIT undergrad in the University of Virginia in the School of Law. But even when I came into the government, I was unprepared. I was like, these guys in Washington, they play their own game and they hate outsiders. That's the first thing you realize when you look at the Senate. It's a club, right? Like these guys are basically doing the same thing year in, year out. I play varsity sports, right? And what we used to do is sometimes switch jerseys, scrimmaging. That's what they essentially do, but they're always on the same team. And so that's that uniparty element. And we have to come in with people who've led, like I have, the movement and say, no, we're doing it this way. This is what the president wants. I don't care what the bad press you're going to write. I don't care all the cafaling that the libs are going to do and the crocodile tears. We're moving forward. We're going to actually cut the budget like the way we said with Doge. We're going to do meaningful stuff. And once you have that courage to lead, people follow. In my experience, I went into OPM and everyone was sitting around. And I said, why are all these careers running the joint? We should be in power. So I removed 4 of the 5 that sat right underneath the director. And there was a large outcry. And then it settled down and everyone realized this is how it was under Reagan. This is how it always was supposed to be. Like they've built a great government for us. Our ancestors have. We just need to get back to its roots. We have to do some major constitutional renovation of the place and get this in tip-top shape for the 250th birthday. And I'm going to do that. This is Project 2026. Project 2025 was birthed right here in Charleston at my kitchen counter 2 years ago. It went global. And this is the next move. We're gonna make this country great again, but we're going to start at the headwaters of the swamp in the U.S. Senate.
Well, Paul, you're speaking a lot of my love language here. When you talk about political will, being the way forward and not caring. I mean, the Senate, as you know, is the exact opposite of that. It is the choke point. It is the place where good ideas go to die. And here's the frustration I think that so many people have. It's that no matter what, it felt like for years, we're just seeing some signs it could change now. But for years, it felt like there's just nothing you could do to get these fake Republicans the hell out of there, right? And they have, they've been there a while. They have a lot of resources at their command, right? And it feels so hopeless. I think just now people are starting to wake up and say, hey, wait a minute. We might be able to get rid of Cornyn in Texas. We could get rid of some of these people. And certainly the base is there. So my question would be, though, So what's the path in South Carolina? Because a lot of people, they know who Lindsey Graham is, and they don't like him anymore, and they realize what he stands for, and it's not what they stand for. But yet, people throw up their hands and say, well, how do you win against these guys? They keep on winning. How do you do that in South Carolina?
Well, there's two things, and we can get them done. Number one is courage, right? I learned this when I went into the admin as an outsider, and I saw people kind of cowering around. I'm a lawyer. I'm a problem solver from MIT. I'm maybe a little dense because I played, lacrosse, and I played attack, and I just went to the goal. You always have to be on offense, but more than that, you have to have courage. As Steve Bannon often will say, like, that's the virtue upon which everything else rests. Without courage, as St. Paul reminds us, we have to be bold. We have to go out and do it. And then two, people, it's a money thing. Look, Lindsey has 15 to 20 million. If we want to make this happen, we have to come together as patriots. Like, I'm lining up this case. We're going to prosecute it against Lindsey. This is going to happen. I really call on all those patriots who've been, blessed by God to really have these resources. Check us out. We're at pauldans.com. Support this campaign. You're going to see a lot of very interesting stuff come out about Lindsey Graham. And, we are going to do this in an economical way, sure, the same way we want to run government. We're going to really bring government down the hill. But this all happened because a few of us stood up and said, we don't accept the status quo. We're not buying this anymore. And that isn't even the law. And that's what we need to do.
Paul, already a savvy media veteran, giving out the website. Give it to us one more time for people.
Well, it's my name. It's Paul Dans, DANS.com. We're launching tomorrow in Charleston. We'll have a live feed on. You can access that through our website. And we're going to start with a prayer service in St. Michael's Church. That's where some of the greatest patriots in our country, Charles Pinckney and John Rutledge, two of the signers of the Constitution, are in their eternal rest in that very church yard. But, the patriots here are getting restless. There's a groundswell here in South Carolina. I want everyone to send prayers. This is a real movement. The man upstairs is in charge of this one. And, I am called to do this. I feel like I don't have any choice. I have 4 kids. This is a future. This is a country that gave my family everything, and I'm giving back, and this is going to happen. So rest easy, patriots, but we got to put our shoulder into the wheel this next year. And I appreciate everyone's support.
Paul Dans, thanks so much. We'll be watching.
Thank you both. Take care.
Don't go anywhere. We'll have your replies to wrap up the show right after this.
They do not know who he is. They know he is a male, possibly white. He's wearing sunglasses. He appears to have a mustache.
It's incredible what they'll tell you over there on Legacy Media. We know that tragedy struck New York last night after a gunman opened fire inside a Manhattan office building. He killed at least 4 and injured 1 person. We already know the alleged shooter's name, residence, and motive. So I posted on X. We'll learn a lot about the New York City shooter in the next few days. Then ask yourself why we still don't know anything about Thomas Crooks a year later. So let's go ahead and get to some of the replies. Dangerous Thoughts starts us out that now the New York City shooter is not a white guy. Guaranteed we will hear very little, at least in the mainstream. MP, that's usually how these things go.
Yeah, I mean, that's changing in part because of networks like this and because of the fact that, X is relatively free when it comes to speech. But this has been a problem for many decades.
Mintmaster replied that we will hear next to nothing. He isn't white. So you get this thought process where people are like, hey, this is the deal that we see here.
Yeah, because what they have done, right, is create a narrative about right-wing extremists who all have to be white, of course, and they've strung that along for a long time. And look, the U.S. government was doing this. The FBI, people, very powerful people, were saying the most strongest threat anyone faces in the country domestically is right-wing terrorism. And that's not the case. In a lot of these cases, these are just crazy people anyway. But that was the narrative. So yeah, people are pushing back against that, and they recognize how the media has worked for so long.
And Neil, I love it when people answer a question with a question. What about the Vegas shooters? Yes, let's go all the way back, because that's a pretty good conspiracy theory right there, because Oh, what happened?
Yeah.
No one knows.
Well, even just this week, there was a shooting in Reno that no one's talking about. But yes, the Vegas shooter is a great example of files that very few people are talking about wanting to be released, because that was one of the most bizarre crimes in American history. And we all know how the memory hole worked with that one, never mind Thomas Crooks and others. So this is something that I think it's heartening to see these comments, because people know this now and they want to see networks step up and actually do the work.
We saw all the problems all the legacy media has. We talked about that with Chris Bedford early in the show. And then we see CNN coming through and reinforcing exactly why no one cares what the legacy media is saying. And it couldn't happen to a better group of people, Matt.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I realized the other day that I have my small Twitter following is larger than the daytime TV following of MSNBC and I think CNN as well, because so few people are watching now. And that is a good thing. But the next step is really about building a new media that actually has prestige, cachet, because it's really trusted. And so the transition period we're in now is you have a lot of political commentators on the right, you have a lot of people who yak about politics, and a big part of our job is to beat up on the legacy media. But I feel like that's old news. Everyone already knows that they don't trust CNN. The question now is, can we build something trustworthy for the future where you don't just come for commentary or to beat up on the other side, but you actually come for news itself. You actually come for entertainment itself. You actually come for reality TV itself. Can we build those big, beautiful media enterprises of the future, because the old ones are dying? And that is, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that is a very difficult thing. It's a lot harder than sitting around and complaining about the other side, or, you know, reading their articles that they wrote. That's work the New York Times and Washington Post does for all of us still, right? Everyone, we respond to these articles and we're reacting to the other side. We're reacting to the psyops. That is what has to end. What has to happen next is original reporting, original entertainment, original shows coming from networks that actually care about quality, excellence, and are trying to really do the thing. And that's the challenge that all of conservative media faces right now. It's an exciting time to be alive, but it's also a time in which there's a lot of flux and, you know, things are changing all over the place. And to be honest, we haven't quite fully built that out yet on the right. And that's what makes things so exciting right now. That's the job.
That all sounds great, but I didn't hear anything about brainwashing future generations. That's pretty much what's happening right now. But it's not just what they're saying. It's all the things that they're not saying, as we pointed out, with all the Russiagate hoax stuff that Tulsi Gabbard has declassified all these documents. You're not going to see it on the nightly news, even on ABC, NBC, CBS. 41 seconds of coverage.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is shameful. But again, they can't give that coverage because they are co-conspirators.
They're the problem.
The plot. I mean, they are the ones who push this. And so they can't backtrack. They won't backtrack. They are on a collision course off a cliff into the dustbin of history. And that's what's so beautiful about what Trump did by fighting them.
Take this as our thank you for watching Blaze TV. And it's only going to get bigger and better from here, because the legacy media is dying. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you back here tomorrow night.